When was the last time you've been to a theater? Do you know this exciting moment when the room goes dark, everyone goes quiet and the curtains are about to open? Today, you will get an exclusive look behind the scenes and get to know the creative and entrepreneurial decisions that go into bringing a play onto the stage, and also what you and your brand can learn from that creative process. Sweet people, what's up? How are you? Are you looking for the sweet spot of your personal brand or your product? You've come to the right place. This is the Sweet Spot Podcast. I'm your host, Marc Suess, and today I talk to Paul Glaser, Managing Director of the English Theatre of Hamburg. Paul is a creative jack of all trades, I would say. He started his career as a dancer at the Royal Swedish Ballet School, and he worked as a dancer, singer, actor. He wrote and produced music, and today he's the managing director of the English Theatre of Hamburg. Drawing from over 30 years of experience, Paul shares in this episode how entrepreneurs and brands can bring their idea to the stage and how to successfully manage creative processes and teams. We look behind the scenes of a theater production from A to Z, how the future of theater might look like, and we discuss the value of live events, or as we call it, shared experiences. I've known Paul for several years. We've been working together on several projects. I helped him with rebranding the theater. We put together events like live podcast night, and he wrote music for some of my projects, one of which you are about to hear now, because Paul also composed the original theme music for this podcast. So turn up the volume and enjoy not only my talk to Paul, but also this upcoming kick-ass rock and roll intro.
Welcome to the Sweet Side. This is the Sweet Spot Podcast with Marc Suess, investigating entrepreneurship, purpose, and the creative life.
So welcome to the Sweet Spot Studio, Paul. Nice to have you.
Thank you.
How are you? All good?
Yeah, I'm good. Considering everything that's going on right now, I think I'm pretty good.
Okay, that's good. Because for the audience, we are recording in the first week of January 2022. And the first thing I was wondering, starting off into this year, talking to a other creative person, how do you handle off days? Can you even take off days? To me, if everything is busy, you have different projects on your plate, you keep working, but as soon as the off days start, it's either a total breakdown or you come up with so many ideas that you can't take off days, actually. How do you handle that?
I handle that by being having a solution in my mind can make me relax.
Okay.
So if I'm tired and if I'm facing a lot of problems, whatever, then I cannot relax. But if the thought process ends in some opportunities that I can see that I can go, oh, I could do this, I could do that, then I can put it off and say, but today I'll relax.
Okay. I'll work on that. That's a good tip, actually. For maybe all the restless creatives listening now. That's perfect. All right, Paul, you are here for the second time. First time we still did our interview in German. Now we switched to widen the audience, the sweet people in English. So I'm going to try and wrap up your amazing, long-lasting creative career in some bullet points, and we can dive into whichever needs more context.
Okay.
So you started your career as a dancer for the Royal Swedish Ballet.
Well, as a dancer in training at the Royal Swedish Ballet School.
Yeah. So, and then you worked as a dancer, as a singer, as an actor, and then you expanded your creative field above the stage or beyond the stage. You worked as a composer, as a writer, as a musician, and you did stage combat at one point, I remember. Yeah,
it sounds like it's like one thing after the other, but it was actually everything at once, if you will. Like when I was at the Royal Ballet School, I was also performing in shows and stuff on the outside, also writing music always in the background. And when I graduated from the Royal Swedish Ballet School, I actually got a grant, which was wonderful. I won this prize, a certain amount of money, which was going to basically sponsor me to go around the world and take classes.
Amazing.
And I had been to New York and trained there. And then this was going to just allow for me to go maybe to Paris, to somewhere where, because when you're a dancer, you can't really go on vacation. You can't go somewhere where you for 4 weeks are just lying on the beach, because it just makes it that much harder to come back. Yeah. So usually you would go to a spot where you could train every day, or even if you took a couple of days off, but you had good training, a good teacher there. You can do a ballet bar or something just to keep everything up and running, because it is really an elite sport. It's unbelievable. Yeah. People just don't understand dancing on that level, what it takes. Sure. So I was supposed to do that, but instead I took the money and I bought my first Sweetspot Studio, my 4-track and my microphone.
Nice.
And I had to actually, afterwards, they're still waiting for me to send them, like, what did you do with the money? Yeah. And that never came. I did, however, take some classes somewhere too, but that was my first purchase. So at that early age, I had my first studio, which I then always had at home. Yeah. And so I was writing and doing things parallel.
So was that from you being interested in music, just from the creative perspective, or did you go into the career as a dancer knowing this is a freaking short time you can be an active dancer? This is a very short career path you're taking, right? You have a couple of years and then you can be a teacher, or you can run your own school or something. But being a dancer, how long can you be active? Mid-30s or something?
Yeah, I think it's a legit question. And for some people, it might ring very true that you're at that early age would be that aware of the progress
maybe not.
Of your life. I wasn't.
Okay.
And I think that's not how you think when you start dancing. For example, I did have the thought, because I was singing already and writing music, and so I wanted to be a performer. And you have to remember, this is back in the 80s. Fame had just come out. It was just all about individualism and dancing and stuff. So it was all about becoming like a pop star or something like that, I guess I was thinking. And I know that the thought about dancing came in, that I wanted to start with that, because that is what carries the time limit. Not just how long does your career span for, but how early do you have to start? Yeah. So I started with that, not really intending to become a classical dancer. It was actually, okay, I got into the school, which was great. There was fierce competition and I loved it. But in the back of my mind, I was also singing and I was also acting. And so that was never like a clear plan, which I doubt that there's anybody out there that's gone through life and gone like, this has gone according to plan. It was just living the moment fully when I was there, and then sort of building on where that took me.
Talking about according to plan, maybe not in the creative industry. I can imagine there are some people out there that take different career paths, different life situations that maybe can follow up. But as we learned from a lot of interviews already, creative people don't think like that. They rarely ever go like, okay, from A to B to C to whatever. Today, you still work as a composer, a writer, a director, but I want to focus for today's talk on your job as a managing director of the English Theatre of Hamburg. Maybe we start at the beginning. How did you end up from Sweden, wherever you've been in the world, in Hamburg, and how did you become the managing director of this theatre?
It can be answered fairly quickly. Okay. It's given that's how it's been. It's been island to island to island. I'm doing this, and that leads me to this. Getting a job in Cats at that time, bringing me to Hamburg for the first time, and then also musical theater didn't exist in Hamburg or in Germany at all. It was more operetta and stuff like that. So Cats was a big experiment, and then that took off. Like we all know today, Hamburg is like the third largest musical city in the world, almost, I would say.
You've been in the original cast in German Cats, right?
Yeah, I joined after like a year. Okay. So I was not the original, but I was the second generation, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah, unbelievable, way back when. And so musical was something completely new. And since there was a lot of interest and it happened quickly, new shows just was popping up like Phantom of the Opera, Starlight Express. And so I started to, I stayed more and more in Germany. I did Cats, and then I went back to Sweden. I did a show there, and then I came back to Germany, and it was on and off or back and forth for a few years. And then it was kind of clear that I was going to establish myself more in Germany.
Then when did you start working with the theater?
That happened a lot of years before I actually became managing director. It was contacts and friends who also worked in the theater who came up and asked for sometimes choreography for a play, or as you mentioned before, fight choreography, which is something that I just said, sure, I had never done or trained. I was a trained dancer, and I knew about safety and security on stage, and I just knew how to make it real. And so it was no life or death situation that I was going to put actors in danger. But it just turned out that I had the capability of making it look really real on stage. So I did that for a few productions, and then I wrote music for I've written more than 40 plays I've written music for in the English theater. And through that collaboration that sort of took off, then after a while is when they asked me to join as associate director and then eventually managing director.
Amazing. Okay, so for everyone who's outside the theater industry or not even has a deep knowledge about theater and creative work, how can I imagine the day-to-day job of a managing director of a theater? How does your job look like? What's your responsibility? Who do you work with?
Well, I think it's difficult to give a general answer. I think every theater is different, and where this theater is. I mean, we are the English theater in Hamburg, which is a whole different thing than being a Staatstheater, like I worked, or the opera in Sweden, for example, or even like Staatstheater, for example, which is a concept over here to have a theater that has like a choir, an acting department, and an opera department, a ballet, and how to bring. Of course, it's very different.
State theater.
Yeah. So that's why being a manager for each of those theaters is a different thing. It does bring the whole strategy and the whole economics into it, and how you make it go around, and what you want your theater to be in 5 years from now, and how to fight for audience segments and become attractive to what repertoire do you pick, and which is in line with where you're moving. So there's a lot of questions which are requiring a kind of overview, which I think is something that I've had always. And I do think that's possibly something that you kind of either have or don't have. Either you see in a show your performance, or you see what you're doing and not much further. And then maybe you have the ability to sort of take a step back and zoom out and see the whole situation, if you will. And that's what's required as a managing director, is that you can sort of see the different departments while keeping in mind where the theater is going, what would be economically feasible. It's not just about making money. It's about, the art itself, and all of those different departments you have to sort of manage together.
And that's what I think is so interesting about this position. And we will go into detail there more. Have the creative vision aligned with the economical terms of the whole
That's unusual, though.
Thing, right?
In most theaters, actually have an artistic director and then a managing director, if you will. And the managing director is typically somebody who is more savvy when it comes to numbers and the legal terms and all of that. And the artistic director is responsible for. And in this kind of case, it's in a smaller theater, which this theater is. It's one person.
Okay. So you have to combine all those skills. That's perfect.
Well, more put it correctly, I have to get the right people in place that I can rely on when it comes to things that I don't really necessarily know how to do myself.
As a good manager should. Yeah. So before we go more into detail about I want to talk about the creative side of your work and the economical side and the theater industry in Germany especially. But before that, what's the English theater of Hamburg? How did it come to be? Why is there an English-talking, English-speaking theater in Hamburg in the first place?
Well, it should be, because Hamburg has, for as far as I know, always prided itself on being a very international city, global hub, if you will. There's been like centuries of close trade with England and stuff like that. So it's never been just a German city. And I think if you can offer trade, if you can offer business opportunities for people, which Hamburg is doing at an intense speed now with startups here and there, not everybody speaks German. So what are they going to do culturally? You have to offer that as well. And so that's why I think English theater it just needs to be a part of the cultural environment in Hamburg.
100%. Yeah. And they go back quite some years. It's founded in the 70s,
In
right?
the 70s, 1976, it was founded by I was going to say Bob and Cliff. In German, you would say Mr. Rumpf and Mr. Dean, which is something I had to get used to as well, that in Germany you have to see everybody, and people just don't, appreciate when you say du to them, like you do in Sweden. I'm Swedish, and in England too. But so Robert Rumpf and Clifford Dean founded theater. They came over. They're two American people who came over, had studied theater in the States, and were language teachers, and then just realized that they missed theater. So they started and pretty quickly created a large group of friends around them who all contributed, and then the theater was founded.
How would you say that the theater changed with all these years under the belt, and now that you're a managing director? Where do you see the theater? Where do you want to take it? I mean, it's still relevant. Hamburg, as we say in Germany, Tor zur Welt, door to the world. But I think it gets more and more relevant. There's more competition nowadays. Also,
well, I mean, a theater has to evolve. A theater is a living organism, if you will, so it will never stay the same. And if it does, it's just not doing anybody any favors. So to try to sort of be in touch with time, and my kind of vision for it right now is more being in touch with what's going on in the West End in England, and also to a degree Broadway, and sort of see that you can come and see a performance here, which wouldn't be out of place there. So I'm not measuring what we do with other theaters in Germany, if you will, which I don't think is necessary at all.
So if you like, let's talk a little bit about your creative role in your day-to-day work. So if I imagine, okay, you're managing directly, you're also directing plays, you put the music up for it, you work with the actors directly. Can you walk us through the process of putting up a play? Like from selecting the material, where do you find it, up until premiere night, maybe?
Yeah, I can. Sure. So walk us through your day. No day is the same.
Yeah.
So, and depending on where in the process you are, it's very different, and that's part of the charm of doing what I do. Well, starting with the idea, first and foremost, looking for a play, unless, which I have in the back of my mind to write a few myself, but finding out what you think would be interesting for the Hamburg audience now. So I go over to London, I look at plays, I read a lot of plays, and I think that when I found something, then we put a season together to go, what could go with this play? Because we have a pretty vast audience, or if not vast, at least it's very broad as far as taste goes. We'd like to do like a classic play, a thriller, a modern drama, for example, and then maybe a comedy of sorts.
Okay.
So then we pick out the other plays. And then, of course, at this particular point, it's Bob and Cliff and myself who sit down and discuss. And I'm usually doing either the classic play or the modern. And they direct one each, and I direct two out of a season. Once the plays are picked and their plays in the season is decided, then it just goes according to plan. It goes about 3 months prior to premiere is where I start casting my play. And
can I ask something before we go into the casting, from the economical side? If you read a play you like, how does it work as a theater? Do you buy a license of that play, or just as a designer and talking about media and licensing and creative value of things? How does that work?
Oh, it's very easy. I mean, I skipped that step because you find a play that you want to do, and then you find out who publishes that play, and then you write them and you say, we intend to do this play in this time slot for so and so many performances, and then they write you back and they ask you how big is the theater, what's the capacity, what are the ticket prices, and based on that is where they calculate how much your fee is going to be, meaning how much the percentage is what you're going to have to pay in licensing fees. And then, of course, if the rights are even available.
Okay. And there are some exclusive plays that you can't even license?
Well, sometimes, but usually it has to do with if, for example, last season there was one play we wanted to do which was licensed in German by another German theater. And then, of course, they didn't want the competition to have the English version and blah, blah, blah. So it was blocked through that time. So it can be different reasons.
Yeah, I like that. I like the economical side of the creative industry because oftentimes creatives don't go into detail too much how to monetize their work and how to put licenses on it. And so, thanks. Okay. So we got that out of the way. We picked our 4 plays for the season, and then it's time to cast people, right? So you need a native speaking.
Sure. We only cast in London.
Yeah.
So and that doesn't mean we only pick British actors, because London, of course, has Irish actors and blah, blah, blah. And especially now with Brexit, it's been something that we have to really pay attention to, not to just hire British actors, which we've done, or the theater has done since the beginning, because now it's just so complicated with work permits and stuff like that. And we're still working that out. So the goal is to get back to actually freely hire people from England. And now we have to sort of look into, do they have a EU passport? Some of the actors are British, but they might have a different passport, or they're Irish. So what I do is I just write onto Spotlight, is what we use. It's an online platform for professional actors in England. And we send that call out only to agents. And they send suggestions. They suggest actors that they have that would be suitable for, 1 or 2 of the roles. And then I sit down, and usually we get about, 150 to 200 actors per role.
Wow. Yeah.
And then, so it takes a couple of days, or sometimes more, to go through each and every one of those actors online. So you look at the show reel, and you sort of, and at the end of that, I pick normally 8 to 10 actors per role, who I invite to an audition. Then I go over myself and I audition them in London. And then I give them 2 days off, and I have a callback day when I call them back in ensembles, then to see how they work together. And then by that time, I have maybe 5 from each role come back. And then I make my decision as to who I would like to work with.
Okay. That's interesting. I would compare it with, HR. Like human resources in a different working environment. So what do you pick people for? Is it something that you can point out in terms of experience, creative expression, or is it just all revolving around the role they have to play? Or is there a certain style that you like? I mean, that's a very interesting part for me from the outside. How do you cast people?
Yeah, I think it is. It's unbelievably quick. I can tell you that. It's just amazing how quick you see when somebody comes into a room and starts reading the monologue that they have. If you think that they're right for the role and for you, it's actually just a matter of seconds. So I never give them a lot of text to learn. I give them a shorter segment, and they come in and do it. And I might work with them in different ways. But it's an intuitive decision, really. It's about believing them in the character, and then also about how they, of course, how they are when you feel the chemistry of a person. Yeah. I mean, yourself, you can meet somebody at a party or somewhere, and pretty quickly you have at least a sense, and then I see them again. If I call them back after a few days, so I can see how they interact with other actors. And then, it's a pretty swift process.
Okay. Off the record, you told me once, and I really like that you take a lot of time telling people no. And if someone gets the role, you're pretty quick about it. And I thought that's really lovely, because if you get the gig, you have enough time to talk. But I like if I get a no and someone takes its time.
Yeah, I mean, I've done enough auditions in my life too. And if and it's a horrible feeling to feel like, the director gave you literally 30 seconds and you came all the way from wherever. So I do think it's just fair that if I invited somebody, even if I see pretty quickly that this is not going to work, but to at least let them finish the scene. And if I give them a second scene, usually they kind of want to read that as well. I let them do that. And then so that they can walk away and feel like, well, he saw everything I wanted to show him. And I didn't sort of stop him in the middle and say, thank you. I do that with people I like. Because then
that's the amazing part.
No, because then I immediately know.
Yeah.
They started, I see them and I've tried a couple of things with them. And if I'm happy, then I cut them off and I say, thank you so much. And I now learn that I have to add, you are great. I'll see you at the callback.
Because you didn't do that at first?
I didn't do that at first.
Oh my goodness.
So my casting director, in London, he came up to me and he said, they came out, they were completely devastated. You didn't even let them. And I said, no, I like them. That's why. And so I've learned to say that I will see you at the callback. You have convinced me. Thank you.
This is good add-on, I think. Okay. Perfect. All right. So then you have you recast them for the recall, see which group interacts the best, which characters you need to put people on. And then what happens? You bring them back to Hamburg.
It depends on the play. Sometimes in certain plays, characters can be very individual. In some plays, especially thrillers and stuff, it's the balance between the actors that are of utmost importance. That means that if I hire somebody, especially like, for example, in one play, in Death Knell, where throughout the play you don't know who did it, kind of thing. It's a thriller. So every character has to be, throughout the play, has to be believable that they could potentially be the one. So then the relationship between them always have to sit perfectly, so that in retrospect I can think back on the woman who I thought was an alcoholic housewife, kind of, bullied by her husband, that she's actually the one who planned everything. So she can't be too bullied and down, and I still need to. Yeah. So then for this particular casting, I had hired the lead girl, and then I wanted to build everybody around her. And then once I'd had the callback and I'd offered her the part, she turned it down and she said, no, I found something else. Okay. Which made me not hire the guy who I had planned to play her husband, and not hire the other guy. So I had to start from scratch. So sometimes people come to do an acting audition just to see, do I get the part, or I would just want to meet the director and then turn it down. And that is... It's like a sour apple, like you say in Germany. It's really
doesn't make your job any easier.
No, because they have to blend, they have to merge. Yeah, So.
Okay. So then you got your cast. You come back to Germany. There's still so much to do. You have a whole empty stage there. No lights, no things on stage, no music. How do you approach that?
Well, it's well, the set is already done. I've already had my meetings about set design, how we do it. I've already have a plan for how I want to light the show and music.
So when does that happen?
Oh, that happens before.
Reading it, you already get ideas on how to build the scene?
Yeah. And then I also have my set designer read it, and he comes up with an idea for it. And I tend to be very spontaneous. So even if I have a set, when I start rehearsing, when I first rehearse, we have built the set up, kind of a scaffolding of the set in the rehearsal room. And then we rehearse it there. And then we go on stage with a real set, because we have a pretty quick turnover between the shows, so that once the show that is running now is usually has the last show on a Saturday, the set gets torn down in the night between Saturday and Sunday, and also the Sunday. Then it's built up on Monday, Tuesday, and that's when we do the light rig on Wednesday. And on Thursday, we already have a run through with everything and taking pictures for the program. And on the Sunday, usually it's already a first audience. It's a very quick process. Yeah. So it really depends on the show. Sometimes I just plan more time if the show is very complicated. But throughout that process, nevertheless, I work with the actors and new ideas come. It's like, actually, you know what? If you open the door this way, it would be much better if it actually opened that way. And then I'll call my set designer and I say, I'd like the door to open the other way. And then he will just get in there and rebuild it. Okay. So these are things that sort of develop throughout putting it all together.
Okay. And music. I know that you write a lot of music that you put into your plays.
Yeah. And it's a great tool. It's and it's actually something that I would think is more in more along the lines of British theater. So I would have an opening number, which or an opening music or sound, which always I think it's important. It kind of lures or pulls the audience into the play. Yeah. The lights come down, there's a music soundtrack going, curtain open, lights come up, and the music comes to an end, and it sort of pulls you into that world. So that's great. And some plays, it could be, it could really strengthen, for example, an emotional moment, to have it there in the background, just like scoring. Like if you asked anybody now if they saw a movie, what do you think about the music? Most people are not actually aware that there is music there. And the same works for theater. If you do it subtly and throughout, people are it's just going to steer your emotions in a way that you kind of, so it sort of is holding them in my hand and sort of leading them through the show, and here you're supposed to feel this, and that you can help that with music.
It's more immersive experience. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. And especially for thrillers where I think it was one reaction I got when I did Woman in Black, because it's a horror kind of thing. And the music was just played such a big part. It's like, it's dark and, on stage, and the emotion is there. And if you can build like a sub soundtrack up and then have the reactions and these strong accents of music. And one woman, she said after the show, she said, I didn't realize you can actually get that scared in a theater.
Wow, that's amazing.
And then I think, and that is really what's the sound does. Yeah. And sometimes it's amazing because I'm sitting there with my sound technician, and we're leveling the show. So they're going, how loud is this sound supposed to be, and from what speaker, and blah, blah, blah. And then we come to a point like in one thriller where there's a scare, the actor is on the other side, and bam, he's hitting the window and she screams, and he played it, and I said, it needs to be louder. It needs to be louder. It needs to be louder, until he says, we cannot have it this loud in the theater. People are just it's just not going to happen. Yeah. And if you would have sat there in the theater without the play, and I would have played it to you, you would have thought it was crazy to play it that loud. But in the show at that moment, it just made nobody thought about the music, but it just had that effect, like a movie has. You sit there and go, bam,
That's amazing.
And so it's a great tool, and I love using it and working with it. And it's also fantastic for plays that require different locations all the time, or costume changes and stuff, to sort of build segues throughout with light and sound, so it doesn't feel like, oh, there's a break in the show and we're all waiting here for like 20 seconds because the actor has to put on a wig or whatever. But you can all make that fluid with music.
Smooth. Yeah. Okay, so what I really like about this is how you can weave in all your different fields of experience and expertise. And it's like a huge, amazing play field for you. I think that's not very common to have that kind of creative freedom to do music, costumes, everything from one hand if you want to do it. So what I wonder is there a certain kind of strategy, or does it always happen in a first music, then setting, then actors, or what happens within you if you read a play and you feel, okay, this is catching on, this is a play I want to do? Is there something that always comes first? Or because you have to reimagine the play and the narrative of it again and again, once in music, once in set design, costumes, acting, directing. It's going through the same thing again and finding different ways to express it. And that's so interesting about the whole coming together of the play, I think.
Yeah. For me personally, I think that it's when you have an experience and you have those skills, if you will, it's nothing that you would plan as in, okay, now I sort of plan it like this. First, how does the actors move? And then how, light it, and then I put the music in like this. This is something, there are lots of elements in that which are just spur of the moment ideas for me. I need to see the actors in the room. I need to work with them because each actor is different. So even if I have an actress coming in and she's supposed to say this and this, and the other actor is supposed to react this because their long story, blah, 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 it will change because the actors do it differently. And even if I've imagined the scene a certain way, it might not really work, because either if I insist on them doing it a certain way or physically, I just cut their wings, because actors are so intelligent in their own acting that I have to allow for them to express that. So I have to sit back and be respectful enough to tell them, show me how would you do this? Because they know the scenario, they know what they have to do, they know the room, and they move around and do it, and I can capture those moments and I can decide what to keep and what to throw away.
Yeah.
If nothing comes, I can give it to them and we can work it out together. But often, it just happens. She's there. She turns around to the window. She grabs the glass. She turns around to him and she goes, never. And she throws it. If that didn't come from her, it would just look really put on and really stiff. But she might not pick up the bottle. She might just go around and she might do something else. And when she does that, and if she does pick up the glass and throw it, then I'll go to Matthias and I go, we need to strengthen that wall because the glass is going to go in there. And then he strengthens the wall. This is nothing that I planned before. And then also with music, as I'm rehearsing with them, I might have an idea before what the music would be like, but I see what it requires at that time. So I can, after rehearsal, run into my studio and I can just write the soundtrack for it. And that's a swift process because it's very clear to me what that music needs to be, or sound design.
Okay. So listening to all of that, you have this ability, or you can rely on your intuition, on your experience, and on your feeling in the moment. Was that something you have to come to, or have you always been sure that you can trust your gut when it comes to those decisions?
I think it has taken a lot of time to just grow the confidence. And it's not to be cocky or to be just like rude or whatever, go, I can do this. It's about allowing yourself to trust, to sort of go, yes. Sometimes I'm sitting there and nothing really does, because maybe the scene is not really, and I sort of, it's just moments where it's important for the show. And, it's just learning to trust yourself. And I think that goes for so much in life anyway.
Exactly. So that's it's a good little experience for that. So one more thing before we come to the economical side and the overall managing director perspective, I wonder if you feel a certain responsibility with the plays that you put up. Because to me, especially today, with every kind of entertainment, every kind of story that you tell, it's always attached to certain meanings and the mission and values that are within the story, captured within the story. Even if it's an old play, you can put it up again, interpret it in a modern way or whatever. Do you feel like there is responsibility you feel, or an overall arch that you use to choose the plays you put on stage? Or is there like a line the English theater follows?
Absolutely. I mean, there are plays that I just wouldn't do today, and there are plays where I change things in the plays. Okay. I call the author and I say, okay, I think this and this would probably be better like this. And if you have that kind of relationship, or you call the publisher and you say, I'd like to make a change. And usually they're very open about that, and they go, okay, that's fine. I mean, there are plays that I've cut pages out of the script, and I said, let's not do those because they really...
do you have an example? Like why and when would you cut something?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't cut something what you referring to, what we're speaking about now, that I think is inappropriate. But for example, Death Knell, what's like I've mentioned that a couple of times now. But it was a whole segment in this first act which just dragged on, and to sort of build the tension there, I just said this whole story of hers here, or cannot just cut that whole thing out. You know what I mean? So it was those kind of things.
Okay.
And as far as responsibility, absolutely. You just want to mirror society now and sort of see things that you think is current and is important to talk about. And yet stay within the image, or what the theater is, the audience that you have. Also, how much can I provoke, if you will, also, and certain audience segments really want that, and others don't. So as a manager, you step out of this artist seat and just become a strategist, if you will, if that's even a word. And so to go, okay, how can I do something that would sort of that would be aimed or geared towards, would be for that audience segment, and something else, and also involve a newer segment of audience. I mean, just now with the pressure on us also expanding as far as digitalizing what we do, just having a digital offering, if you will, just showing shows, and it just showed me, and I think I mentioned that last time, that most people that watched us digitally had never been in the theater, which was super interesting. That's to amazing. See that, oh my God, it's a whole new audience. So you want to be current, you want to be fresh, but all in the line with where you want your theater to go to.
That's nice. Do you have like an absolute dream play that you couldn't put up yet, that you always wanted to do?
There are, I mean, we're so limited as far as how many actors we can have because the space is smaller. And then economically, we have to sort of be how many actors per season can we afford? So that's a limit. But there are definitely plays that I want to do that we might not be, or the audience that we have. You kind of have a responsibility of teaching your audience as well.
Yeah.
Like, so we've had a group that has followed the theater through the at least 80s, 90s, whatever. And we kind of know where they're comfortable and what kind of they want to see. And to do something like a play that's called The Motherfucker with the Hat, which is a phenomenal play. It's hysterical. Okay. But it's just a little too heavy for that audience segment. They probably would be embarrassed just ordering tickets for it.
Okay, they can't speak the name. The play that can't be named.
And it's not just about that, but it's about the subject matter. Yeah. It's about, it's plays that are really moving and really, which I just realized that they would just be shooting straight over the heads of the people that we have right now. Yeah. I might be able to do that play in a couple of years, but for now we will, try to stay within, step by step towards where we want to go.
Okay, so now we're talking strategy. So now we get into the managing director's seat again. You talked about the audience, and I think I've been to theaters in London West End, and it's a very, very, very different audience compared to a traditional German theater. As you said, there are a lot of people that have subscriptions to theaters for years and years, and I think it's worth it, but you kind of have to fight for a younger audience in German theaters. Is that right? From looking from the outside in, is that?
Yeah, I mean there are so many different aspects to that. First and foremost, it's how do you reach your audience, a marketing campaign, and how do you reach the right people? That takes time, and then you slowly build towards that. But while building towards a younger audience, you don't want to lose your older audience. Exactly. So it's a constant weighing one against one another, or taking it very slow and calculated like this. And now what's interesting for me as a managing director now is like being an artist, writing music and stuff like that. Then even thinking about adapting something for an audience is just, you would say that's a complete sellout. If a person sort of does, it could have been this, but I want to do this because I think they like it better. Yeah. But as a managing director, and of course, I have to think like that. Yeah. So it's definitely two different ways of thinking. To be what serves the theater the best, and how does this set us up for the future the best? And that is something that took a while for me to. I can't just go and do whatever I want to do just because it pleases me. It has to be attached to some sort of plan.
That's an interesting position you're in, fighting your inner creative and your inner managing director. How do you negotiate that?
It's not that difficult. I mean, because I've been also, just take doing shows before for the whole struggle between the corporate world and theater. I've done a lot of commercial theater in my life, and I've done a lot of like intellectual theater, if you will. And I've never valued one more than the other, really. Well, to a degree, of course. You have like a commercial show that is just basically selling a product, if you will. But it's still parameters around that show, which another show would be as well. If you do a show with poetry or something, it's just different parameters. Yeah. And then you can skillfully execute it and create a very something very artistic out of it. But the way society works today, it tends to be two camps. It's like the commercial camp and the actual theater camp. And sometimes I think it makes sense, and many times I think it just doesn't. That you look down, some people working in the commercial field, and you think that, and I would rather, do it in a certain way, which I think, maybe I'm speaking out of line right now, but Sweden, for example, and Germany, which I think is a good thing, from the 70s, 80s with the state theater being sponsored by the state to a degree, or subsidized. You have a responsibility to also educate people. So you don't do plays just because, people love them. You have to actually, and that was something that was very popular when the society was very rich in the 80s, 90s, especially Sweden. And now when people are hitting on hard times, then it's still that, I don't have to be I don't have to fill the seats in the theater. I just want to really shake them up or something like that. And that could be fitting in some situations, but I think you also have to have the other aspect to go, okay, but what am I trying to say? How can I do this? And my incentive shouldn't be to scare everybody running out of the theater.
Yeah. 100%.
I don't know if that even makes sense, but you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. If you experience cultural products like movies, shows, and even theater in Germany compared to the UK or America, you can feel a very big difference. Especially, I can't talk about Sweden. I don't know that well enough, but especially in Germany, you feel that there is a very different approach to it. Even post-war, building up the economy again, who gets to distribute money in the German film industry, especially. I have some people, some friends working there, and that's a very different process compared to private investors or other people.
Both the States and England haven't been subsidized theaters the way that Germany and Sweden has. So that's the biggest difference.
Yeah, totally. So me personally, especially after the last 2 years, I'm absolutely drawn to any kind of live performance, be it gallery openings, theater, live music, whatever. And at the same time, I see that a lot of young people are so used to short form digital storytelling, like Insta stories, TikTok, short YouTube videos, whatever. So where do you see the theater audience for the future? How would you pitch like the amazing live theater performances to a younger audience? How do you think you can bridge that gap? Or is it even a gap? You don't even see it that way? Like, how do you get people into theaters that are used to TikTok, Instagram, and all the other things?
Well, I think it's very difficult to make that comparison because you're talking about entertainment coming to a person like this, and just TikTok and YouTube and all of that stuff is something that you just you might see something that is very powerful and have a wonderful experience doing that. But a theater is always a shared experience. It's sitting in an audience with people around you and becoming one and sharing an experience. And then you could say, well, that's something you would also get in a movie theater. Well, to a degree, yeah, you're right.
But it's not live.
But it's not live. And adding that aspect of live theater, it's just you can never reach the heights that you can with theater through just a video.
Yeah, 100%. Okay. I like the idea of the shared experience. It's not like you don't have to sell it to me. I was just thinking about it because, I think that our approach to media and stories in general is changing. But I think exactly what you said, if you can really share the experience. And I also feel like there is no, it's a German saying, no second floor. Do you know what I mean? Like an acrobat. If you see something live, there's always this quote unquote risk of failing. And you can feel that. I think that transports to the audience. And you will never have that with any kind of, even if it's an interactive movie, you will never have that. So it's different. It's more distance between you and the creative product, I think.
Absolutely. I think that it's, and that's something that a lot of live performers also use, that they would come on. Circus have always done that. You know what I mean? You see them do the flip off and they fail the first time, they fail the second time, the third time they do it. You know, it's just building that tension. And in theater, we don't necessarily build in things where they drop something or things go wrong. But it's definitely that risk and that you see. And people love that. People love to see when something goes wrong and just be shaken up a bit and go, oh my God, it's actually happening. Because audiences today, like the question, how do you bring a TikTok audience into the theater? Well, first and foremost, it's going to take them a while to get used to that. They can't sit there and zap or mute or whatever, you know. For when you sit down there and watch, you can tell that a lot of people, or the way they talk with one another or interact as if they're in their own living room, and you go, it's a culture that you have to also learn to a degree.
Yeah. The culture is a good point, because I wondered, before we had our talk today, I wondered about the future of theater, because I'm very optimistic. I think that live performances and shared experiences will become way more relevant after the last 2 years with the pandemic, and feeling what it's like to not have this cultural variety and all the options to go out to experience something like this. But I wondered how you feel about the future of the English theater in your role. Do you have a vision? Do you take it season by season? How do you plan for the future? How do you look ahead?
Well, for me, the planning for the future doesn't necessarily only deal with English theater in Hamburg now. It means I want to tour. I want to connect with other English theaters like the one in Frankfurt, and Berlin has a little one. I'm working now together with an initiative called Move the North that wants to connect Scandinavia with Northern Germany, for example, to have a show from our theater go to Copenhagen or to Sweden, and to bring in guest performances, which I started this summer, even though in the middle of the pandemic, a 6-week festival where I invite people, and I had people from Vienna, English speaking, an improvisational group from there. I had people from Sweden down, and I had English people not from England because they were not allowed to fly in without quarantining. But, so it's creating some sort of festival, for example. So it's a lot of things that move outside of Hamburg, which is my focus right now.
We are looking forward to that. And also you are, I think, more and more going digital, right? Is that something you will still?
Well, more and more, I wouldn't say. I'd say we're also creating digital formats, like shows that we have recorded, which was also a big thing licensing wise. You're not allowed to. And some contracts are very strict about you're not allowed to do that at all.
Okay.
Which is something I realized during the pandemic, speaking with different publishers, that they have to think like this, that we have to, for example, during the show Apologia, the lockdown happened smack in the middle of our run, and I had to negotiate with the publisher to film it and actually stream the rest of the shows that we had in our contract, and which they allowed. And now they tend to be a little bit more open. They're very different. Each publisher is different, but so we film our shows and we edit our shows, and so that we would at a later point be able to say, this is our production from last year that we're streaming 10 shows of, for example. Of course, we're going hand in hand with, I'm sure you've seen movie theaters showing like the stage version of this and this from the National Theatre in London.
Exactly.
And so it's a culture that, of course, we do as well. And we've had audiences from Finland, the States, Australia, and even South America when we started to stream things. And that's very interesting to be able to have that broad audience.
That's amazing. So if the listeners want to check it out, I will put a link to your website in the show notes, and they can check it out themselves. So Paul, thank you so much for this insight. I have 2 more questions that I ask all of my guests towards the end of the interview. So the first thing is, I always am very keen to know what excites people, what inspires them right now. Is there anything going on in terms of books, shows, talks, people you met, things you learned that you want to share with us?
Well, I do think that it's you can't find a general answer. Something that inspires me probably will not inspire somebody else. But I do think that for me, reading, and I know I answered last time, also conversation is super important. And it actually, during this time of the pandemic, it's become clear how important it is to talk to people and to talk to friends. And even if it's a phone call to a friend I haven't spoken to in a long time in Sweden or the States or somewhere else, it just puts you back on earth, puts you back on your track, if you will, and usually leaves me inspired. So it's not necessarily about what I'm doing or about a problem I'm facing. It's about just everyday things, but other people are inspiring, and written words, like reading books and literature. It can be everything from just entertainment to a political, whatever. It just finds moments. I have those moments reading a book, and suddenly I just spring out of there and open my pad and write down a line that I think, oh my God, that is so true, or that is great. And it can come from anywhere, really. Any book.
Great. Okay. Reading and conversations. Really, that's good. A lot of books. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Amazing. So and the last question that would be, what can we look forward to? What's next from either you personally or the theater?
For me personally, it is, I'm not directing until the beginning of next season. So I have a little break now where I'm writing a couple of musicals, actually. A musical that I wrote myself a long time ago, which I'm completely updating and rewriting. And then 2 new works, one musical that's premiering in the summer up in Sweden, and another with the German writers. I'm just writing music for that, which is not set when it's going to premiere yet. So things like that.
That sounds interesting. I will also put up a link to your personal website where we can probably read more about that.
Good.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Paul, for being here, for sharing a little bit of your day-to-day life and experiences as managing director of the theater. I think we can learn a lot, and there are some parallels between your work and different lines of work. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
That was my talk with Paul Glaser. I enjoyed talking to him a lot. I learned from his long experience in so many creative fields. My takeaway from this talk is to come back to a project from different angles, revisit an idea or project again and again to gain perspective and get even more impulses, like Paul does when he puts up a play on the stage for every department. But the biggest topic that will stick with me are the real-life events, the shared experiences. I think they will become more and more important over the next years for people and for brands. The more virtual reality, metaverse, and artificial events we are offered, the more we hopefully enjoy the real moment, the shared experiences. So it's worth thinking about how your brand can provide such an experience. If you want to talk about it, visit my studio website and get in touch. I'm happy to talk to you about storytelling, brand strategies, and shared brand experiences. And if you're looking for some original music for one of your projects, or you need support with the production or putting something up on stage, reach out to Paul. You find his contact in the show notes. Next week, I'll be talking to Sam Stokes. She's a singer, songwriter, producer, and she just started her own record label in LA, Lilac Records. We talk about her creative work and we try to figure out where ideas actually come from. That's it for this week. Take care, people, and I hear you next week on The Sweet Side.
This podcast is produced by Sweetspot Studio. New episodes each week, wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you enjoyed the show, leave a rating and subscribe to never miss an episode. Find out more at sweetspot-studio.com.